The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony, painting the alien sky with streaks of orange and purple. Jack Miller stepped out of his small research cabin and breathed in the fresh air. 6 years on this frontier world, and he still marveled at how the light hit the strange blue-green plants that surrounded the human settlement. Jack was the colony's wildlife specialist. His job was to study the animals of New Haven and help the colonists live safely alongside them. He loved his work. Each day brought new discoveries about this world and its creatures. "Jack, come in. Do you copy?" His radio crackled with the voice of Susan Wright, the colony director. "I copy. What's happening, Susan?" Jack grabbed his gear, already moving. Susan rarely called this early unless something was wrong. "We've got a situation. An alien ship crashed in the western forest. Need you out there now." 20 minutes later, Jack arrived at the crash site. The forest clearing was busy with activity. Colonial security officers had set up a perimeter around the damaged spacecraft. Jack recognized the ship's design immediately. It belonged to the Vexery, an alien species humans had only recently made contact with. Susan waved him over. Next to her stood 3 tall, slender aliens with pale blue skin and large black eyes, the Vexery. "Jack, these are our visitors." "Their ship had navigation failure and made an emergency landing," Susan explained. "They've requested our help with evacuation." One of the Vexery stepped forward. "I am First Officer Zelk. We thank you for your assistance." Jack nodded politely. He had met Vexery before, but something felt off about these 3. They kept looking back at their ship with what seemed like fear. "We have removed all important items," Zelk continued. "The ship can be examined after we depart on your transport vessel. Are there any hazardous materials we should know about?" Jack asked. The Vexery exchanged quick glances. "No, nothing of concern." As the colonial team helped the Vexery gather their belongings, Jack noticed they avoided an entire section of the ship. His curiosity grew when he overheard 2 of them speaking in their own language, using words his translator picked up as dangerous and specimen. While the Vexery were distracted with the evacuation plans, Jack slipped away toward the avoided section of the ship. The door was locked, but the crash had damaged the control panel. After a few minutes of careful work, Jack managed to override the system. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside was darkness, broken only by the soft blue glow of emergency lights. Jack stepped in, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. The room was clearly a containment area, with reinforced walls and specialized equipment. A low growl from the corner made him freeze. In the beam of his flashlight, 2 eyes reflected, back glowing with an unnatural amber light. As Jack slowly moved the light, he saw the source, a large, Volf-like creature with iridescent blue fur. But this was no ordinary Volf. It had 6 limbs instead of 4, with the middle pair being shorter, but ending in what looked almost like hands. Its face was longer than an Earth Volf's, with a row of ridged bone along its skull. The creature was injured. Dark purple blood matted its fur along one side. Yet despite its wounds, it rose to a defensive position. Placing itself between Jack and something behind it, Jack lowered his light slightly and saw what the creature was protecting. 3 small cubs huddled together, their fur the same shimmering blue as their mother's. "What have we here?" Jack whispered. "You should not be in this section." The voice of Zelk came from behind him. The Vexery stood in the doorway, its black eyes unreadable. "You didn't mention you had passengers," Jack said, not taking his eyes off the Volf-like creature. "That is a Corva, a predatory species from Nexus 4. It is property of the Vexery Science Division." Jack noticed how the creature's eyes tracked the Vexery with clear intelligence and hatred. "She's injured. It was damaged during capture. We were transporting it and its offspring to our research facility." "Research for what purpose?" Zelk paused. "The Corva are unique. They possess unusual intelligence for non-sentient creatures. Their physical capabilities are remarkable. They make ideal subjects for certain studies." Jack didn't need to ask what kind of studies. The containment room had military markings. "This animal needs medical attention. The specimens are no longer viable for our purposes." The adult is too dangerous to recapture in our current situation. Zelk made a gesture and two more Vexari appeared with weapons. We will dispose of them before departure. Jack stepped between the Vexari and the wounded Corva. No, you won't. You do not understand. These are not simple animals like those on your Earth. Corva are killers. They cannot be tamed or controlled. The adult has already killed two of our handlers. She's protecting her young, Jack said. Any mother would. Stand aside, human. These creatures are Vexari property. Jack didn't move, not anymore. You crashed on a human colony. We have laws about the treatment of animals. I won't let you kill a mother and her babies. The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Susan appeared in the doorway. What's going on here? Zelk turned to her. Director Wright, your wildlife specialist, is interfering with Vexari internal matters. Jack quickly explained what he had found. Susan's face hardened as she listened. First Officer Zelk, I understand these creatures belong to you, but Jack is right. We cannot allow the killing of animals, especially not a mother with young, without proper cause. The proper cause is our safety and yours. Zelk's voice took on a cold edge. But we will not force the issue. Keep the creatures if you wish. When they tear your colonists apart, remember that we warned you. The Vexari lowered their weapons and backed out of the room. We depart in 1 hour, Zelk said. The Corva are now your responsibility. Your compassion will be your downfall. After they left, Susan turned to Jack with concern. Are you sure about this? If they're as dangerous as the Vexari claim... Jack looked back at the injured Corva. The creature had relaxed slightly, though her eyes never left them. One of the cubs peeked out from behind her, curious despite the danger. Look at her, Susan. She's intelligent. She understands what's happening. Jack knelt slowly, keeping a safe distance. I can't let them die. Not like this, Susan sighed. Fine, but they're your responsibility, Jack. If anything happens, ... I know. I'll take full responsibility. When they were alone, Jack studied the Corva more carefully. The mother watched him with eyes that seemed to calculate and assess. This was no simple animal. There was something more. There's something the Vexari feared. It's okay, Jack said softly. I'm going to help you. The Corva made no sound, but her posture shifted slightly. Whether it was trust or merely exhaustion, Jack couldn't tell. But as one of the cubs took a tentative step forward, he felt a connection form, a bridge of compassion across the stars. The meeting room fell silent as Jack finished speaking. He looked around at the faces of the colony leadership. No one seemed happy with his plan to keep the Corva family at his research station. Let me get this straight, said Alan Foster, the colony's security chief. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest. You want to bring alien predators into our colony. Predators that even their own discoverers are afraid of. They're not just predators, Jack said. You didn't see how the mother protected her cubs. There's intelligence there. Director Susan Wright tapped her fingers on the table. Jack, I backed you up with the Vexari, but now I need to think about the safety of our people. We know nothing about these creatures. That's why I need to study them. The Vexari were using them for military research. Don't you want to know why? Lisa Blackwood, the colony's xenobiologist and Jack's closest friend, spoke up. I've reviewed the limited data the Vexari left behind. The Corva come from a death world called Nexus 4. Everything on that planet has evolved to be deadly. The Corva are apex predators even in that environment. All the more reason not to keep them here, Alan said. Jack pulled up images on the room's display screen. They showed the mother Corva, still in the temporary containment area they had set, up at the crash site. Her wounds were visible, but she stood alert, watching the camera with those intelligent amber eyes. Look at her, Jack said. She's hurt, surrounded by strange beings in a place she doesn't know, but she's not just lashing out. She's assessing, planning. That's not simple animal behavior. Lisa leaned forward, studying the image. Those middle limbs are fascinating, almost like primitive hands. Exactly, Jack said. The Vexari notes mention problem-solving abilities and pack coordination beyond anything seen in similar species. I believe they're on the edge of sentience. Alan laughed without humor. Great, so they're smart enough to plan how to kill us. Or smart enough to understand we want to help them, Jack countered. Susan raised her hand to stop the argument. Jack, I understand your position, but the colony comes first. These creatures stay in full containment. At the first sign of trouble, we end this experiment. Understood? Jack nodded. It was better than nothing. 3 days later, Jack had converted part of his wildlife research station into a secure habitat for the corva family. The space had a natural area with plants and rocks, a shelter, and a small stream all behind reinforced transparent barriers. Security cameras monitored every angle. Moving the corva had been challenging. The mother, whom Jack had named Nova, was too injured to fight much, but she still managed to cut one of the handlers with her claws before they sedated her. The wound required 20 stitches. Now, Jack sat outside the habitat, making notes as Nova explored her new surroundings. The sedation had worn off, and she moved with caution, testing the barriers and examining everything in the enclosure. The 3 cubs stayed close to her but showed more curiosity. They're settling in better than I expected, Lisa said, joining Jack at his observation post. She had finally agreed to help with his research, despite her initial concerns. Nova knows they're safe here, at least for now, Jack replied. Look how she's checking the water source first, then shelter points. She's creating a mental map. As they watched, the largest cub wandered toward the barrier where Jack and Lisa sat. Its fur had darker blue markings than its siblings. The cub placed its front paws on the clear wall, looking directly at them. I'm calling that one Flare, Jack said. The one with the gray patches is Echo, and the smallest is Shadow. You named them already? Jack, don't get attached. We still don't know if this will work. Jack ignored her warning. The Vexery note said they were all female, like their mother, about 3 months old in Earth terms. The cub at the barrier made a soft chirping sound, then suddenly darted back to Nova as Alan entered the observation area. Your pets seem comfortable, Alan said, his voice cold. Director Wright asked me to check on the security measures. They're not pets, Jack said, and the security is fine. Triple-layered barriers, motion sensors, emergency sedation systems. Alan walked slowly around the habitat, studying Nova. The corva mother stared back, her eyes never leaving him. I don't like the way it looks at me, Alan said. She's assessing whether you're a threat, Jack explained. I am a threat to anything that endangers this colony. Alan turned to Jack. The Vexery sent a message. Their high command demands we destroy these creatures immediately. They're calling them escape test subjects and threatening diplomatic problems if we refuse. Jack stood up. They abandoned them. They were going to kill them. That's not how they tell it. According to them, you interfered with legitimate research and stole valuable specimens. Lisa stepped between them. What did Director Wright say? For now, she's holding them off. But she wants results, Miller. 1 week to prove these things aren't a threat, or we do what the Vexery wanted in the first place. After Alan left, Jack returned to his observation. Nova had gathered her cubs in the shelter area, grooming them one by one. The scene looked so normal, like a mother caring for her children. It was hard to believe the Vexery considered them nothing but weapons to be studied. 1 week isn't much time, Lisa said. It's enough. I just need to establish some basic communication, show that they can learn and adapt. And if they can't? Jack didn't answer. Over the next few days, he worked around the clock. He established feeding routines and began simple tests to measure Nova's intelligence. The results were promising. She quickly understood the patterns of when food would arrive and began to anticipate the tests. The cubs grew more active as they adjusted to their new home. They played with the enrichment items Jack provided, showing remarkable coordination. Sometimes Nova would watch Jack for hours as he worked near the habitat, her amber eyes following his every move. On the 5th day, Jack noticed something wrong with Shadow, the smallest cub. She wasn't playing with her siblings and lay limp in the shelter area. Nova paced anxiously, making sounds Jack hadn't heard before. Lisa, something's wrong with Shadow, Jack called over the communication system. I need to go in. That's too dangerous, Lisa's voice replied. Use the medical scanning system. It's not detailed enough. I need to examine her directly. Jack, no. Nova will tear you apart if you go near that cub. Jack looked at Nova. She had stopped pacing and was staring at him through the barrier, making that same unusual sound. It almost seemed like she was asking for help. I don't think she will, Jack said. I think she knows something's wrong with her cub, and I think she knows I can help. Before Lisa could protest further, Jack activated the small entry chamber to the habitat. It was time to see if his belief in Nova's intelligence was justified or if the Vexery had been right all along. Jack's heart pounded as the entry door slid open. He carried a small medical kit in one hand and held the other empty, palm out, to show he wasn't a threat. Nova stood in the middle of the habitat, her amber eyes fixed on him. Her fur rose along her spine, but she didn't growl. It's okay, Nova, Jack said softly. He had been talking to her through the barrier for days, hoping she would get used to his voice. I'm here to help Shadow. Lisa's voice came through his earpiece. Jack, be careful. At the first sign of aggression, I'm flooding the chamber with sedative gas. Jack took a slow step forward. Nova tensed but didn't move. Her middle limbs, the ones that looked almost like arms, twitched slightly. Another step. Jack was now fully inside the habitat. The door closed behind him. Nova made a low sound in her throat, not quite a growl, but a warning. I know you're scared, Jack said. But Shadow needs help. He gestured toward the small cub lying in the shelter area. Nova looked from Jack to her cub and back again. Then slowly she backed away from the path to Shadow. She didn't go far, just enough to let Jack pass while staying close enough to attack if needed. Jack moved carefully to the shelter. Shadow's breathing was shallow, and her small body felt hot to the touch. The cub's eyes were half closed and dull. She has a fever, Jack told Lisa through the cum. I need to get a blood sample. As Jack prepared the sampling tool, Nova crept closer. He froze, feeling her breath on his neck. The other two cubs watched from a distance, unusually quiet. Jack slowly turned his head. Nova's face was inches from his own. He could see every detail of her alien features, the ridged bone along her skull, the slight glow of her amber eyes, the sharp teeth visible behind her partly open mouth. I won't hurt her, Jack whispered. I promise. Nova made that strange sound again, the one that seemed like a question. Then she nudged Shadow gently with her nose, as if showing Jack what was wrong. Jack took the blood sample as quickly and painlessly as he could. Shadow whimpered, and Nova tensed, but she didn't attack. When he was done, Jack placed a small monitoring patch on the cub's side. I'll be back soon, he told Nova, with medicine. Lisa was pale when Jack exited the habitat. I can't believe she let you do that. She knows Shadow is sick. She knows I want to help. Jack handed her the blood sample. We need to analyze this right away. They worked through the night in the lab. The results showed Shadow had contracted a bacterial infection. Her alien biology made treatment challenging, but by morning, they had created a modified antibiotic that should work. Jack returned to the habitat with the medicine. This time, Nova moved aside more quickly, watching as Jack injected the antibiotic into Shadow. The medicine will make her feel better, Jack explained, knowing Nova couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would reassure her. She needs rest and water. As if in response, Nova nudged her sick cub toward the small stream in the habitat. Shadow drank weakly while Nova looked back at Jack. I think she understood you, Lisa said, watching from outside. Not my words, but my intent, Jack smiled. She's smarter than we thought. By the next morning, Shadow showed improvement. Her fever was down, and she had started playing with her siblings again. Nova seemed more relaxed, watching Jack with what almost looked like gratitude. The breakthrough changed everything. Over the next few days, Jack spent hours sitting just inside the habitat, talking to Nova and her cubs. The cubs grew bolder, especially Flair, who would come close to sniff Jack's hands and equipment. They're not just intelligent, Jack told Lisa as they reviewed the latest data. They're social learners. Watch how the cubs copy Nova, but also how they try new things she doesn't show them, Lisa had to agree. The way they work together, too. Solve the puzzle boxes is remarkable. Earth wolves are smart, but this is different. Jack had placed various problem-solving toys in the habitat. To get food rewards, the Corva had to manipulate locks and mechanisms. Nova had figured out the first one in minutes. By the third day, the cubs were working together, one holding a part while another pulled a lever. The most exciting development came when Jack introduced a simple symbol system. He showed Nova that pressing a blue circle on a panel would dispense water, while a red square would provide food. By the second day, she was using the correct symbols when she wanted something. She's not just responding to training, Jack said excitedly. She's communicating. On the sixth day, one day before, Director Wright's deadline Jack sat in the habitat while Nova rested nearby. The cubs played with a new puzzle toy, chirping to each other as they worked out how to open it. The door to the observation area slid open, and Alan Foster walked in with 2 security officers. "Time's up, Miller," he said. Jack stood quickly. "The deadline is tomorrow. Plans have changed. We received another message from the Vexery. They're sending a ship to collect their property. Director Wright wants this wrapped up before they arrive." Lisa stepped between Alan and the habitat. "You can't do this. Look at the data. These creatures are on the verge of sentience. They can communicate, solve problems, work together. They're still dangerous predators," Alan replied. "The Vexery warned us about them, and frankly, I trust their judgment. They've known about these things longer than we have." Jack looked back at Nova. She had risen to her feet, sensing the tension. The cubs had stopped playing and huddled behind. "Their mother, they're afraid," Jack said. "Nova knows something's wrong. All the more reason to end this now, before they become a bigger problem." Alan signaled to the security officers. "Prepare the euthanasia protocol." "No," Jack moved to. "Block them. You can't do this. I've proven they're intelligent. Nova protected me when I helped Shadow. She understands more than you think. Step aside, Miller." "That's an order." As they argued, no one noticed that Nova had approached the barrier. She placed one of her middle limbs against it and made a series of sounds different from anything Jack had heard before. Then, to everyone's shock, she pressed her paw against the blue circle on the panel. Then the red square, then back to the blue circle. "She's trying to communicate," Lisa whispered. Jack turned to Alan, whose face showed confusion and uncertainty. "You see? She knows what's happening. She's trying to tell us something." Before Alan could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the research station. Director Wright's voice came over the comm system. "Security alert, all personnel to emergency stations. We have unauthorized access to colony systems." "Repeat, unauthorized access to colony systems." Alan's comm unit buzzed. He listened for a moment, then looked at Jack with narrowed eyes. "This isn't over. Stay here until I return." He and the security officers hurried out. When they were gone, Lisa checked the station's security feed. "There's been a breach in the main communications array. Someone's been sending unauthorized transmissions." Jack looked at Nova, who still stood at the barrier, watching him intently. "The Vexery, they've been watching us all along. But why? What are they so afraid of?" Jack didn't answer. Instead, he approached Nova at the barrier. She made that questioning sound again. "I won't let them hurt you," he promised. "Any of you." Nova pressed her middle limb against the barrier once more, directly opposite Jack's hand. For a moment, separated only by the clear wall, human and alien seemed to understand each other perfectly. Night fell over the colony as Jack and Lisa worked quickly in the research station. The alarms had stopped, but the colony remained on high alert. Through the windows, they could see extra security patrols moving with flashlights along the perimeter. "Fence. The Vexery ship will be here by morning," Lisa said, checking her datapad. "Susan just sent word. They're demanding immediate access to the Corva." Jack looked at Nova and her cubs. The mother Corva seemed to sense the urgency. She paced in the habitat, occasionally stopping to gather her cubs close to her. "We need to move them," Jack said. "The Vexery won't just take them for research. They'll destroy them. Move them where? The colony is surrounded by wilderness we barely understand. And even if we could, Director Wright would never approve it. Jack's face hardened. Then we don't ask for approval. It took an hour to prepare. They gathered portable food supplies, medical equipment for the cubs, and tracking devices. Jack downloaded all his research data onto a secure drive. Whatever happened, he wouldn't let the Vexery erase what he had learned about the Corva. Lisa looked nervous but determined. I'd checked the security rotations. There's a 10-minute window at midnight when the North Gate has minimal coverage. If we're going to do this, that's our chance. Jack nodded. He approached the habitat one last time before they would open it. Nova stood watching him, her amber eyes glowing in the dim light. We're leaving, Jack said to her. I'm going to open your habitat. You need to follow me quietly. Do you understand? We need to be quiet. He put his finger to his lips, making the human gesture for silence. To his amazement, Nova mimicked the action with one of her middle limbs, touching it to her snout. Then she made a soft chirping sound. To her cubs, who immediately gathered close to her. She understands, Lisa whispered, astonished. Not the words, but the intent, Jack replied. She knows we're helping them escape. At exactly midnight, they deactivated the habitat barriers. Nova stepped out cautiously, her cubs close behind her. Jack led the way through the darkened research. Stationed to the rear exit, they had almost reached the door when they heard voices outside. Security patrol, Lisa hissed. They're early. Jack signaled Nova to stay back in the shadows. The Corva mother immediately herded her cubs into a dark corner. Where their blue fur blended with the darkness, the door slid open. Alan Foster stepped. In with 2 guards. I knew it, he said, seeing Jack and Lisa with their packs. You're trying to hide them. Alan, please, Jack began. The Vexery will kill them. You know that. What I know is that you've compromised this entire colony for some alien predators. Alan's hand rested on his weapon. Where are they? The habitat is empty. Before Jack could answer, the station's lights suddenly went out. Emergency lighting cast the room in a red glow. Alan and his guards looked around, confused. Colony-wide? Power fluctuation, one of the guards reported, checking his comm. All systems resetting? In that moment of distraction, something moved in the shadows. Fast, almost too fast to see. Nova lunged past Jack and Lisa, staying low to the ground. One guard went down with a startled cry. The second raised his weapon, but Nova was already past him, heading for the open door. No! Jack shouted. Nova, wait! But the Corva was gone, her cubs racing behind her into the night. Alan recovered quickly, pointing his weapon at Jack. You've done it now, Miller. Those things are loose in the colony, Jack shook his head. They're not heading for the colony. They're running away from all of us. The next hour was chaos. Alarms blared as security teams formed search parties. Director Wright arrived, her face tight with anger as she confronted Jack. Do you realize what you've done? Those creatures could kill someone? They won't, Jack insisted. Nova just wants to protect her cubs. They're heading away from the populated areas. Susan looked unconvinced. You can't know that. I can. I've spent more time with them than anyone. Trust me, please. In the end, Jack convinced Susan to let him join the search. If anyone could find Nova and her cubs without violence, it was him. Lisa came too, bringing tranquilizers instead of lethal weapons. They tracked the Corva family to the edge of the colony's northern boundary. Beyond lay unexplored forests and mountains wilderness that humans had barely begun to study. The tracking device shows they stopped about 2 kilometers. Ahead, Lisa said, checking her scanner, in that valley. Jack led the way, moving as quietly as possible through the alien forest. The trees here were taller than those near the colony, with strange glowing fungi growing on their trunks. The night was alive with the sounds of New Haven's native creatures. They found Nova and her cubs in a small clearing beside a stream. The Corva mother stood alert, her ears swiveling to catch every sound. The cubs huddled behind her, looking tired from their run. Jack stepped into the clearing slowly, hands empty. Nova, it's okay, it's me. Nova's posture relaxed slightly when she saw him. She made that now familiar questioning sound. I know you're scared, Jack said, but running isn't safe. There are dangers in this forest you don't understand. As if to prove his point, a loud crashing sound came from the trees behind Nova. Something large was moving toward them, one of New Haven's predators. Nova growled, positioning herself between the sound and her cubs. Jack moved closer, raising the tranquilizer rifle Lisa had given him. From the trees emerged a massive creature with 6 legs and armored skin. It was a ridgeback, one of the largest predators on New Haven. The colonists rarely saw them this. Close to the settlement, the ridgeback roared, showing rows of sharp teeth. It was at least twice Nova's size. Nova didn't back down. She made a series of sharp barking sounds, and to Jack's surprise, her cubs didn't run or hide. Instead, they spread out in a formation, each taking a position around the ridgeback. They're hunting together, Lisa whispered. The cubs know what to do. Jack raised his rifle, but before he could fire, Nova attacked. She moved with incredible speed, darting in to slash at the ridgeback's legs before jumping away. The ridgeback turned to follow her, but as it did, Flare and Echo rushed in from the sides, biting at its flanks. It was an amazing display of coordination. The ridgeback couldn't focus on all of them at once. When it turned toward one, the others would attack from behind. Even Shadow, the smallest cub, played her part, darting in to distract the creature when it got too close to Nova. Now I see why the Vexery wanted them, Lisa said. They're not just intelligent, they're natural warriors. The fight ended quickly. The ridgeback, bleeding from multiple wounds, retreated into the forest. Nova gathered her cubs, checking each one for injuries. Jack lowered his rifle and approached slowly. Nova watched him come, no longer showing fear. You see? Jack said to Lisa. She could have run deeper into the forest, but she stopped here, where we could find her. She knows we can help. A distant sound made them all look up. Lights appeared in the night sky, a ship descending toward the colony. The Vexery, Lisa said. They're here. Nova made a low growling sound. She recognized the threat, even from this distance. Jack knelt beside the Corva family. We can't outrun them. But I have an idea. He looked into Nova's intelligent eyes. I need you to trust me one more time. The Vexery ship hovered over the colony landing pad, its sleek design gleaming in the early morning light. First Officer Zelk stood with 4 armed guards as Director Susan Wright greeted them with formal politeness. We appreciate your prompt response to our concerns, Zelk said. Where are the Corva specimens? Susan kept her face neutral. There have been some developments. Our wildlife specialist has been studying the creatures. He believes they show signs of sentience. That is impossible, Zelk replied sharply. The Corva are animals. Dangerous ones. We have studied them for years. Perhaps you should see the evidence for yourself, Susan suggested. Jack Miller has prepared a presentation. In the colony's main meeting room, Jack stood nervously beside a display screen. Lisa sat nearby, carefully watching the Vexery delegation. Alan Foster and the security team lined the walls, weapons visible. Where are the creatures? Zelk demanded. They're secure, Jack said, not quite lying. But before we discuss their location, I want to show you what we've learned. Jack played video recordings of Nova using the symbol system to communicate, solving complex puzzles, and teaching her cubs. The Vexery watched in silence, their black eyes unreadable. This behavior is not new to us, Zelk said when the videos ended. It is why we were researching them. Their intelligence makes them valuable as weapons, Jack said. But they're more than that. They're a developing sentient species. Zelk made a dismissive gesture. You are mistaken. Now take us to the specimens. Jack looked at Susan, who nodded slightly. It was time for the real test. They're in a secure observation area, Jack said. This way. They walked to a large room, adjacent to the meeting hall. One wall was made of clear, reinforced material looking into another room. Inside that room, Nova sat calmly on a platform. Her cubs played nearby with puzzle toys. Zelk stared at the scene. How are they so docile? They should be trying to escape. Because they trust us, Jack explained. We've treated them with respect, with compassion. As if on cue, Nova looked up and made direct eye contact with Zelk. The Vexery officer took an involuntary step back. Watch this, Jack said. He pressed a button, and a panel with colored shapes lit up inside Nova's room. Nova approached the panel and deliberately pressed shapes in sequence: blue circle, red square, green triangle. On a screen above, the same shapes appeared in the same order. She's not just responding to training, Jack explained. She's communicating, telling us she understands. Zelk seemed disturbed. This changes nothing. The Corva are Vexery property. We will take them now. Lisa stepped forward. Actually, it changes everything. We've been in contact with the Galactic Council for Sentient Rights. They're very interested in our findings. You had no right. Zelk's voice rose. These creatures are from Vexery space. They're living beings, Jack said firmly, not property. Zelk turned to his guards. Secure the specimens. We leave immediately. The guards moved toward the observation wall, but stopped when Susan raised her hand. I wouldn't do that, she warned. What you're seeing is a live feed. The Corva family isn't actually here. Zelk's eyes narrowed. What trickery is this? No trick, Jack said. Just insurance. Nova and her cubs are safe in a location only I know. If anything happens to me, Lisa will send our research to every species in the Galactic Council. The air in the room grew tense. The Vexery guards looked to Zelk for orders. You do not understand what you're interfering with, Zelk said, his voice low. The Corva homeworld is in a contested region. If other species learn of their potential, other species should know, Jack insisted. Sentient life deserves protection. Zelk stared at Jack for a long moment. You humans are strange. You risk so much for creatures that would kill you without hesitation. Nova had many chances to hurt me, Jack replied. She chose not to. She understood I wanted to help her family. Susan stepped forward. We propose a compromise. The colony will establish a protected reserve for the Corva. They'll be studied, but as a developing sentient species, not as weapons. The Vexery will have access to all research data, and if we refuse? Zelk asked. Then we take this to the Galactic Council immediately, Lisa said, with all our evidence. Zelk conferred quietly with the other Vexery. Finally, he turned back to them. We will consult with our government. Until then, the Corva remain where they are. But be warned, these creatures are not the gentle pets you imagine. They evolved on a death world. Killing is in their nature. After the Vexery left, Jack, Lisa, and Susan headed to the real location of the Corva family, a secure facility built into the side of a hill, far from the main colony. Nova greeted Jack with that special chirping sound she only used for him. The cubs had grown noticeably in just a few weeks. Flare was almost half her mother's size now, and even little Shadow looked stronger and healthier. You did it, Jack, Susan said, watching Nova approach the barrier to place her middle limb against it in greeting. You convinced the Vexery to back down. For now, Jack cautioned. But they'll be back. They're afraid of what the Corva might become, with good reason, Lisa added. If these cubs are this intelligent now, imagine what their children might be like. Or their children's children. Jack placed his hand against the barrier, matching Nova's gesture. That's why we need to protect them. Give them time to develop naturally, without interference. Over the next 6 months, the colony established. The Corva reserve a large territory beyond the northern forest. Jack built a research station at its edge, where he could continue his work with Nova's family. The cubs grew quickly. By the end of the first year, they were almost adult size. Their intelligence developed just as rapidly. Nova mastered a symbol language of over 50 different meanings, and her cubs learned even faster. Other scientists came from Earth and allied worlds to study the Corva. Some were skeptical at first, but none remained so after seeing Nova solve complex problems or watching the cubs work together to overcome obstacles. The Vexery kept their distance, but their ships occasionally appeared in orbit, monitoring the situation. One evening, as Jack sat on the observation deck of his station, Nova approached the barrier with something in her middle limbs. It was a small arrangement of colored stones, blue, red, and green, arranged in a pattern that Jack had taught her to mean friend. "Yes," Jack said, smiling, "we are friends." Nova made a new sound, different from any he had heard before. Then she carefully arranged the stones in a new pattern. Lisa, who had joined Jack for the evening, leaned forward. "Is that a new word?" Jack said, his voice filled with wonder. "She's creating her own symbols now." Beyond the barrier, Flare, Echo, and Shadow watched attentively as their mother formed the new pattern. Then each cub gathered stones and copied it perfectly. "They're teaching each other," Lisa whispered. Jack nodded, his eyes moist with emotion. "This is just the beginning. One day they'll have their own language, their own culture." As the sun set over the alien forest, Jack thought about the day he had first found Nova and her cubs in the crashed Vexery ship. How close they had come to being destroyed out of fear and misunderstanding. One small act of compassion had changed everything, not just for the Corva, but for all of humanity. For in protecting Nova's family, humans had discovered something precious, another intelligence among the stars, another perspective on the universe they shared. And it had all begun because one human had chosen compassion over fear.